Hi, I'm Aya Jaffer,
And I'm Joy Rupert.
and we are the co-presidents of the SJ Multicultural Anti-Racism Coalition. We meet bi-weekly on Thursdays during lunch, and we'd love to have you join us and participate in progressive conversations just like this one.
Combating racism is an extremely important topic to discuss at school. In order to keep SDA funky and welcoming and accepting, we created this presentation to promote an anti-racist mindset. So we usually start off our MAC Coalition meetings with an inspirational quote. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world.
To start off, let's go over some anti-racist terminology that we will be referencing in our presentation.
So first, what is the difference between prejudice, discrimination, and racism? Prejudice is a rigid and unfair generalization about an entire category of people. A prejudice assumes that something you think to be true for a whole group of people applies to every individual within that group, with little to no evidence. This often takes the form of stereotypes. Negative stereotypes are often directed at people who are different from others, which means that people who are a minority in a population are more likely to become negatively stereotyped. Discrimination, on the other hand, is described as any unequal treatment of different groups of people. This cycle starts with prejudice taking hold of a community, which then motivates discrimination against a minority group. So, prejudice is about what people believe, but discrimination is the matter of action. Now, racism includes belief, thoughts, and actions based on the idea that one race is inferior or better than another. Racism can be explicit or implicit.
So what is the difference between explicit versus implicit? Explicit bias refers to the attitudes or beliefs we have about a group that we are consciously aware of, but implicit biases are unconscious biases we have about other groups. While we might easily recognize an explicit act of racism, like a racial slur or hate crime, we often don't consciously recognize how implicit biases affect how we interact with each other.
Now, you might be wondering, how can one avoid participating in discrimination or negative stereotypes? First, let's recognize the different forms of racism, and then we can learn how to be an active anti-racist.
Racism is always on the basis of race, but can revolve around sexuality, religion, nationality, and gender. And there are many different forms of racism, and these are just a few. To start, microaggression. Microaggressions are a comment or action that subtly and often unconsciously or unintentionally expresses a prejudiced attitude towards a member of a marginalized group, such as a racial minority. Microaggressions can be intentional or unintentional, and sometimes even well-meaning, but they communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative racial messages or assumptions to the receiver. Oftentimes, the perpetrator is unaware they have engaged in demeaning or offensive comments, so you have to make it visible to them. Get the perpetrator to understand what happened and how they might have caused pain. Casual racism is most commonly displayed or expressed as a thought to be harmless joke or comment, and it often leads to subconscious discrimination. By refuting racial stereotypes in society, we also help to prevent the next generation of schoolyard and office bullies. Refuting casual racism is often responded with, "Why are you so sensitive?" or "It's just a joke." In order to disarm casual racism, try steering the conversation away from problematic remarks or jokes and communicate that it is offensive. Now that we've learned some examples and responses, let's learn how to develop our anti-racist mindset in the Anti-Racist Toolkit.
Now, what does it mean to have an anti-racist mindset? Simply being not racist isn't enough. The opposite of racist isn't not being racist, but being an anti-racist. Anti-racist is an active state of mind. It is the active process of identifying and opposing racism, from calling out racist policies and institutions to correcting your friends and family members when they say something culturally insensitive.
Step 1. Challenge your biases, prejudices, and recognize your implicit and explicit biases that you may have. The only way to truly evolve as an anti-racist is to learn how to take criticism and learn from your mistakes and internalize biases. Take a critical look at what informs your worldview and why it's so easy to assume that people that don't look like you share your perspective. If you're white, it's always good to educate yourself about whiteness and white privilege.
Step 2. Take time to learn, research, and actively educate yourselves on issues around racism. Read books, watch diverse films, listen to podcasts, join educational groups or movements like our coalition at SDA, and support multicultural businesses. Even a quick Google search can go a long way to educate yourself on how to be an anti-racist. By educating yourself, you're not only forming your anti-racist mindset, but you are also becoming more confident and prepared for race-related conversations and confronting discrimination.
Step 3, taking action at an individual level. Be willing to fulfill the anti-racist mindset by speaking up when family members or someone you know says a racist joke or displays implicit or explicit acts of racism. It all starts within the community. It can be awkward at first to confront close people in your life, but it's important to make sure you're educating others as well as yourself. This struggle isn't going to end overnight, but by informing others, you're helping to push this movement forward. Don't be afraid to say the wrong thing. It's always better to say something rather than nothing at all. And the last step is to join coalitions like our Mac Club to engage in more discussions like this one. Our meetings are bi-weekly on Thursdays during lunch, and you can join using the QR code, Classroom, or Remind. We can't wait to see you there.